Recording in progress.
Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us today. So we are halfway through our Red Week, our biggest fundraising campaign of the year. We are raising much needed funds to help us continue our work of training humanitarian workers around the world. We're hoping to raise £25,000 through this campaign, and just to illustrate what we can do with the funds raised. So, for example, £100 enables one person anywhere in the world to attend our online training to gain the skills needed to help their communities protect themselves against the effects of climate change. Or £500 can enable one humanitarian water engineer to attend our developing groundwater course, which gives them skills to help communities around the world to gain access to clean water. Or our final target of £25,000 can help us develop a program like our Africa Catalyst project, which focuses on building the skills and knowledge of local engineers to drive development in their region. So please give generously and support our work. The easiest way to donate is through our Just Giving page. The details you can see on the screen now. So thank you again, once again, for joining us, and back to our today's session. So today's webinar is titled Be the Change, and we'll be talking about what each one of us can do in order to live more sustainable lives. So very relevant, very current. If you can please mute yourselves once you join in. Our presenters today are Francesca De Petris, Sustainability Principal at Tony G and Partners, and Rebecca Woodhouse, Design Engineer also at Tony G and Partners. We are grateful to our patron Tony G and Partners for helping us organize this session, and of course we are very grateful to Rebecca and Francesca for hosting it. And before I go, just to add that there will be a Q&A session at the end. So if you have any questions, you can either post them in the chat box, or you can wait for the end of the session and then ask them yourself. So hope you enjoy the session. Thank you.
Stuart, what he said, I can pay on
Good afternoon and welcome to the presentation, Be the Change, How to Make More Sustainable Choices in Your Daily Lives, presented by Francesca De Petris and Rebecca Woodhouse from Tony G and Partners. The objective of this presentation is to provide lifestyle tips and quick wins and some useful information and less known facts that contribute to a more sustainable living. Please mute your microphones and we hope you enjoy this presentation. Henry David Thoreau, a renowned American intellectual and philosopher, and probably one of the first environmentalists, once said, "What is the use of a house if you haven't got a tolerable planet to put it on?" The environment and our biosphere have often been seen in the past as something external to us, but in fact, we are deeply connected, and unfortunately, we are seeing the consequences of this belief in these days. We need to adopt an approach of environmental stewardship, where we are all responsible for the protection of the natural environment through individual and collective conservation and sustainable practices. But what are our environmental impacts? This slide illustrates some of the things that affect our carbon footprint: energy and water consumption, the choice of the food we eat, our consumer choices, and the way we spend our free time. At the end of the presentation, there will be a quiz that will test your knowledge on environmental and sustainability issues. So please start preparing for the quiz by going to the webpage and typing in the code 911215. The login details are provided in the chat box.
Cool. So I'm just going to start by running through some energy saving options that you might have. So some of these are some bigger things, such as the government have a grant that is available to some people where you can qualify for free loft insulation or cavity wall insulation. So it's worth having a look online to see whether or not you are eligible for that. Another kind of bigger item option you've got is that when your appliances need replacing, to try and replace them with more energy efficient appliances. This will help you save money in the running costs and also the energy associated with their use. And then some more smaller kind of day-to-day things we can do. So make sure you're turning off appliances that aren't in use, even if they're just in standby mode, because turning things off at the plug can save you up to £30 a year, and also the energy usage that is associated with that. One really good option you've got is to get a smart meter. So they essentially just replace the existing meter that you've got, but they send automatic meter readings to your energy provider. But the good thing about them is they also come with like an in-house device that shows you your up-to-date energy usage at a given time. So you can play around with turning different things off and seeing where your sort of hotspots are for your energy usage and your I guess the carbon emissions that are associated with that in your house. One good thing you could do is turning down your thermostat, even just turning it down by 1 single degree. You might not notice necessarily the change, but on average, you can save about £80 a year by doing that. And also, again, the energy associated with that. Draft proofing is a really quick thing, an easy thing that people can do. So if you just get a draft excluder, put it in front of your front and back door of your properties, which is often where you're going to be losing a lot of heat from, and also a lot of cool air coming in during the winter. And then one of the main things that is really good to be doing is to change to a green energy supplier. And often if you look at the sort of cost comparison sites, some of the green energy suppliers will actually work out cheaper than the non-green alternatives. And a lot of them also have referral codes of £50 if you refer someone. So that just goes and offsets against your bill for the next month. Often they're not on a contract, you're just on like a rolling monthly contract, and it's super easy to switch. You just sign up directly and they do everything for you. And again, you can get the free smart meters installed, normally through these renewable companies as well. So yeah, definitely something worth doing. Next up is some water consumption saving ideas. So apart from sort of the obvious things like turning taps off if you're not using them, if you're having short showers, you're saving more energy or more water than having a bath, making sure your dishwasher or your washing machine are fully loaded before you use them. The other thing that is available are these sort of like water saving devices. So they go in your toilets or your showers. They can't mix and match with every type of toilet or shower, but I've got friends that use them and they said that they've actually cut their water bills quite significantly. So again, as well as saving water, you're saving cost. And another thing you've got is you can get like sort of flow stoppers for your taps, and they can reduce your flow up to 60 to 70% and again help reduce your water bill significantly, whereas you probably won't actually notice that much of a difference to your day-to-day lives by doing this. And the main reasons we want to be using less water is because as well as cutting down on the hot water and therefore the energy that's associated with heating that water, you're also cutting down on the emissions associated with collecting, treating and supplying clean water.
So this slide is about best practices in terms of purchasing. The idea is to minimize packaging as much as possible. A new model of shopping is provided by some shops which allow to purchase loose items. From food to detergents and clothing, the benefits of reducing packaging are many and have several implications on the environment. A comparison of plastic packaging with cardboard packaging in terms of carbon reveals the much higher rate of carbon emissions given by plastic. And this is not including environmental impacts given by air and water pollution. In October 2015, the government introduced a charge of 5p for single-use plastic bags for larger shops in England, and this charge was increased in May this year from 5 to 10p, and also the range of shops is also being broadened. So check the government website for more information. What is sustainable food? Food production is connected to carbon emissions in different ways. The slide illustrates the difference in carbon emission given by different stages of the food production, different types of food. So you can see on the left that growing food makes 45% of carbon emissions, followed by transport and processing. And a difference, for instance, in 1 kilo of tomatoes grown naturally outdoors and grown in a commercial greenhouse goes from 0.4 to 50 kilos of CO2 equivalent, which is a massive difference. And similarly, because it's related to different types of production, different foods have different carbon emissions given by how and where the food was grown, and also affecting its transportation. So local is better, and grown outdoors naturally is better. But sometimes, check some facts, because sometimes even eating not local and non-seasonal, so it is not obvious. So get some more information. There's a website that provides that information. How do we reduce waste at home? Examples can be quite intuitive, but we don't put too much attention to them. But for instance, using items which can be washed. So minimizing single use of tools and containers, segregating waste in the proper way, disposing of waste properly, carrying around, for instance, a refillable bottle for water instead of buying new ones, even if, when you finish it during the day, and check for those points which have water fountains, for going to the gym, and you finish your water, don't buy a new bottle, but just bring a refillable one. And use, for instance, the process of buying secondhand and selling what you don't need anymore is taking quite a lot of now attention, and it's very, very good. It's very advised. So this is just a reminder that this week is Zero Waste Week, which is an international campaign raising awareness on environmental impacts on waste, and provides a number of resources to implement waste reducing practices in your home and work environment. So you can sign up to the pledge provided a website. It's worth remembering the waste hierarchy. Reduce and conserve is at the top tier of the hierarchy, and recycling should only be one of the last choices.
So fast fashion is something that's talked about quite a lot at the moment. So we've already got enough clothes on the planet now to clothe the next 6 generations, which shows how big an issue it is. So, and also the fashion industry accounts for about 10% of global carbon emissions, which is massive. So the best thing we can be doing is buying less, because we have already got enough on the planet. We don't need to be making more and more new clothes. Try and repair what you've already got. If that's something that you can't do, then often there's sort of local groups you can get in your area where you can donate things. And a lot of people that sew their own clothes would be really happy to take garments off you, even if they had holes in or whatever, because it means that they could make something else out of those garments, because only 1% of clothes are actually recycled into new garments at the end of their life cycle. If you do need to buy stuff, it's best to buy secondhand if you can. The good thing is now that there's a lot of charity shops online which sell clothing, so you can filter things by sort of size, quality, and the item that you want. And I know that's kind of something that puts people off from necessarily going into charity shops and that kind of thing, because there's so much option and maybe not in the size you want. So as well as helping the environment by doing this, you can also save yourself a lot of money. Make sure you watch out for greenwashing. So a lot of high street retailers claim to have sustainable clothing lines now, but it's worth researching to see how sustainable they actually are. A lot of the time, they'll still kind of have like the factory workers associated the same, people not being paid a fair living wage, claiming that they're using environmentally friendly materials, but they might not be. So it is worth researching them, because there seems to be a trend at the moment where companies are kind of using terms like green and sustainable because they know that people will buy them. But yeah, I would advise doing your own research into how sustainable they actually are. If you do need to buy stuff, then try and buy more sustainable materials from sustainable brands where you can. Sometimes they will be slightly more expensive, but if you can buy more high quality items compared to, or fewer, sorry, high quality items compared to more worse quality items, then that is obviously beneficial. Often the lower quality items will be made of cheaper materials, which often contain plastics. So I would advise, where you can, looking into these sort of ethical and sustainable brands that do exist now. And the other thing is just to consider how often you're washing your clothes and how you're doing it. So you don't need to wash things every time you wear them. Make sure that you've got full loads when you are doing your washing. Try and use cold water where you can, and use sort of green detergents, and limit the amount of chemicals you're using. So this is just some sort of top tips for recycling and common mistakes that people make. So make sure you're rinsing your packaging, because anything contaminated with food waste cannot be recycled, and it could contaminate the rest of the recycling process. So make sure you're rinsing out any plastic bottles, jars, cans, any of that sort of stuff that you are putting in the recycling. Check your local council rules, because a lot of councils will have different rules about what can and can't be recycled. So in Manchester, we can only recycle plastic bottles. So any other plastic you put in your recycling bins will not be recycled and could contaminate the rest of the recycling that is in there. So just make sure you check to see that if you think you might be doing something good, but actually you could almost be making the problem worse by contaminating other things that are in there. Making sure that things are large enough to actually go through the recycling process. So the main thing, or the most common thing that gets talked about with this, is foil. So firstly, make sure you're rinsing your foil and it hasn't got food still stuck in it. But try and collect enough foil as you can until it's the shape of a tennis ball. Otherwise, it might just get missed throughout the recycling process, and then it never ends up getting recycled anyway. And then the other key thing is something that Francesca mentioned about making sure you're not putting food in the general waste. So engineered landfills are anaerobic environments, so they don't have any oxygen, and then therefore when the food does break down in a landfill, it's actually producing methane gas, which is obviously terrible for the environment. So wherever you can, try and use food waste bins, or if you have your own compost bin, then that's a good thing to do too.
So these slides provide some interesting facts about carbon emission related to transportation and recreational activities. Tony G have offices in Esher and Glasgow, and we've calculated the carbon emissions for different types of travel to and from these two offices. The results are clearly showing that much carbon emissions could be avoided by using public transportation and minimizing travel altogether. A quick comparison of different means of transportation is also shown on the left, with carbon emissions ranging from 0.0085 kilos of CO2 equivalent for riding a bike to 0.3 for driving a standard petrol car. Some carbon emission facts related to packaging, specifically bottles in this case, show that recycled PET bottles have almost 50% carbon emissions less compared to glass bottles, and 12% less carbon emissions compared to non-recycled PET plastic, polyethylene. As introduced previously in other slides, plastic has a major impact on pollution on water and aquatic life. I'm sure you probably know already some of those statistics that 80 to 90% of plastic in microplastic in our oceans are actually coming from our rivers, which are coming from landscapes and roads and so on. So as I said, like some statistics on the right hand side are providing some of these facts, and they're quite alarming because they're affecting aquatic life. And some of these processes can be irreversible or have a very long time to be brought up to, the initial ecosystem, habitat restoration. They're very, very long time processes. So by individual choice, we can actually make a difference by what we buy, what we reduce in our packaging, and so on.
So following on from the stuff we've been talking about carbon emissions, so there's a really simple tool online that's available from the WWF website. There's about 20 questions. They're all multiple choice that you can answer about different aspects of your life. So how much meat you eat, how often you fly, how many things you buy in a year, that kind of stuff. And it breaks it down into what your annual carbon footprint is, and what proportion of that is allocated to different things such as travel or like energy use at home. And then for each of those sections, it breaks down some tips on what you can do to reduce your carbon footprint. So that's a really good tool to kind of just get a good overview of the carbon emissions and your carbon footprint as an individual. Next thing I would recommend everyone do is there's a search engine called Ecosia. So I've set this up as my main search engine. For every search you do, they've worked out that you essentially remove 1 kilogram of CO2 from the atmosphere, and it takes about 45 searches to plant a tree. So their whole thing is that they use the profits that they make from people searching to plant trees, and they've researched kind of the areas in the world that need them the most. Another good thing is they don't sell your data like some search engines do, and you can download it on all your devices. So I've got it on my phone, and every time I search anything, I'm helping remove CO2 from the atmosphere rather than funding ads. Next up is garden and balcony biodiversity ideas if you're lucky enough to have a garden or balcony. So I won't go through all of them in a lot of detail, just a bit of an overview. So one really good thing to do actually is to keep sort of one area of long grass or a wildflower area. You'll get lots of sort of bugs and insects thriving in these areas, and adding wildflowers will encourage bees and butterflies and other pollinators to your garden. Especially if you use native species, then you're kind of creating like a healthy ecosystem full of native plants and therefore native insects and animals, which is obviously improving the biodiversity of your garden. A really, really important one is to try and avoid peat compost wherever you can. So 94% of UK's lowland peat bogs have already been lost, and they're a really biodiverse sort of community of plants and animals, and one of the world's most important carbon stores. So every time you remove peat, you are releasing that stored carbon back into the atmosphere. And there's a lot of restoration projects that are ongoing at the moment, but it takes years and years and years to kind of get them back to where they used to be. So there's so many other options other than peat compost, so please try and avoid them if you can. Creating a compost bin is obviously good, from what we were saying about food waste. And you've got your own free compost that you can use, which helps to improve the health of the soil and helps all your plants grow. Avoid pesticides and poisons where you can. You might think you're kind of targeting one sort of creature, so say you're using weed killers or slug killers, but actually they tend to kill a lot more than just the thing that you're targeting. So if you poison slugs and then hedgehogs eat them, or even like cats, dogs, bees, like they're pretty bad. So please try not to use them and use more natural kind of products for those things if you can. Like there's loads of natural things like using eggshells to deter things or using pepper. So try using them instead. Planting your own herbs or fruit or veg in the garden is a really good way or a good use of your garden. You're getting rid of the packaging associated with buying those things, the cost, and also the carbon emissions that are associated with kind of transporting those foods to you in the first place. And then even if you're in a flat, which I am, like you can still have houseplant, you can still grow your own herbs, or even like certain things like my friends grow tomatoes in their flat. Like those are all nice options you've got. They'll help improve the air quality of your flat, and they're also quite a fun thing to do and save you some money.
So now it's quiz time. Please connect to the Slido website and good luck. The quiz will be followed by a short round of questions and answers, and contact details are provided in the slide if you should have more questions for us. We hope you found the presentation informative and entertaining, and thank you for attending. I'll open the Slido page. Just bear with me a moment. Okay, I will start the quiz now. Most of the questions have 20 to 30 seconds, and we'll show the result at the end. Good luck. You can read the question. Sustainability is the use of a resource that doesn't cause long-term depletion of the resource or affect the diversity of the ecosystem. True or false?
Francesca, I'm not really sure if you're supposed to see the quiz on display, because at the moment we can't. Or are we supposed to do it? Okay,
Yes.
excellent. Now we can. Thank you.
Sorry, it's just a bit slow. So that's the first question, and can move into the next one. Is it going into the next question? Sorry, are you seeing the next question? Is it going?
We can kind of see the whole template, but yeah, we can see the question number 2 as well.
Is it? Okay, started already. Okay, great.
Now we can see question number 2, yes.
Yeah, it's just very, very slow on my machine. So Which example is an ethical reason for the practice of environmental stewardship? And C is the right answer. Which is not a benefit of maintaining sustainable forest ecosystem. And most of you got it right. We'll go back to the leaderboard later on. Waste management, what are the 5 R's of waste management? It was a bit tricky. So let's remember reviews should be at one of the first places and recycle at the end. When was the carrier bag charge introduced in the UK?
This is easy, but
I think quite a few participants are not necessarily UK based, so we can't blame them if they wouldn't know the answer.
no, it's okay. The trick was that it was actually increased in May, but it was introduced in, in May this year, but it was introduced in 2015. It's good that we have some participants from different places. How can consumers help promote supply chain transparency? You all got it right, which is good. Which ways can consumers reduce their clothing footprint? Brilliant. Which part of a typical washer dryer cycle uses more energy and emits more carbon emissions? It is the dryer cycle. Karen is leading, Stephen, Neil, Ash and Pete. Well done. We'll go back to the leaderboard. How much less ozone depletion occurs if a consumer washes, then hang dries their clothes compared to a typical wash and dry scenario? I know we didn't have an ideal summer this year, but in days like this, it's good to
hand close out. Yeah, because it's actually 98%. Great, so congratulations to Stephen, and then followed by Neil and Jay, and then Karen and Ash are still in the, first 5. So well done to all of you. So I'll just stop sharing this. And go
Does
back.
anyone have any questions? I know that there was a question in the chat box, and I believe that Rebecca has already answered it in the chat box, but are there any other questions?
We're happy also to be contacted if you have further questions, and trying to check my chat box.
I only just have one quick question, just about, you said about food waste, about disposing of that. If where's the best place to dispose of that if you don't actually have a compost bin or anything like that?
Are you based in the UK?
Yeah.
Do your council do food waste?
I don't
think most
know.
tend to. It might be worth having a look at your council's website
Yeah.
and just see. Sometimes you can request that they send you a food waste bin, so
Okay. I'll have a
they
look
might
at
be able
that.
to do that. Or if they don't do it, there's probably some information on your council's website that tells you what you could do with your food waste, if that's not an
Okay.
option.
I'll have a look. Thank you.
And there should also be information about the nearest recycling centres. So also because you might not have not all the councils and not all the neighbourhoods have the same availability of recycling bins around your block or flats or your houses, and so you might want to bring clothes to a clothing bank. Or bulk items. Sometimes it's really good because you really can't put them in bins anyways. So just have the check very well. Sometimes they have specific. They're a bit funny sometimes on when you can access them by car, when you can actually go on foot, and you have to sometimes book an appointment to bring stuff. So yeah, advice is, and every council is actually different.
Yeah.
But also sometimes when you see on the bin there's some information about plastic, it's just a general thing, but we know that not every recycle center or not every municipality can recycle all plastic, so it's actually good to get some information of which plastic can go, because sometimes the bin description is just a very general thing. So that, for instance, polyethylene, sorry, the polystyrene, sometimes or the hard plastic, the CD, like the old CD cases, they can't always be recycled. So it is actually good to check, and they have to go into the landfill waste, or it's actually good to see if they have different options instead of putting them in the landfill waste.
Thank you.
We also have a question from William in the chat box. It's quite a hard one, but I'll read it anyway. What is the carbon balance between continuing to use a very low mileage petrol car that exists and buying a new electric car with its built-in carbon requirement from construction? I don't know if you're going to be able to answer this one.
So it's a valid question. It's the same as same question as in, do we switch to battery operated equipment, and how do we calculate the carbon footprint of batteries, or what's the carbon emission of solar panels? So the idea is that the more the product becomes available, the more information is available on the carbon footprint of the whole life cycle of the product. It's a valid question. So some research can be done on individual items, but it's not readily available in national databases, or some information is actually available on the DEFRA website on carbon emissions. And it's about then it's a bit of a, so you have to consider the life cycle, the life cycle of your electric car, the capital carbon given by the components that go in. And we know that some technologies use, for instance, rare metals, and those rare metals, even if it's a very small amount, could have very high impact. So more information will become available as the technologies are and more manufacturers are available. So I do believe there will be ways to quantify this, and it will be included in national databases. And but what needs to change is basically the mentality of having only capital carbon, so carbon given by the installation only, or the material, and put it into a whole life carbon calculation. So how many times are, for instance, replacing components in that car? So it's a bit of a, it's more complex. So the maintenance, what's the maintenance associated with that plant? So, you know, or with that machine. Yeah, something happened to my, yeah, okay. I hope it answered the questions.
I think we got more of a comment rather than a question. As our council doesn't collect food waste, we use a green cone food digester. It looks like a composter, but you can put cooked food in it too. And to answer the Miriam's question, this is going to be available. The recording is going to be available on YouTube probably later today or tomorrow. Do we have any other questions? It seems like not. Well, I would like to thank everyone for, up to a point, but maybe the, okay, from William, up to a point, but maybe the implication is that ditching the petrol car is not always right thing to do.
Yeah, but we know that, for instance, fuel has one of the highest carbon emissions. So it's not obviously the absolute answer, but we know that the impact is so high that contributing to reducing the use of petrol cars and diesel cars, of course, with different solutions. So using more of the, you know, the alternative modes of transportation. We also know that there will be a cap to the amount, there will be a limit to the utilization of alternative types of cars because of the capacity of the infrastructure. So we know that, you know, low emitting vehicles is not the solution, but it is definitely one of the, we have to tackle this from different sides.
Thank you, Francesca. Once again, I think we're running out of time now. So once again, I would like to thank everyone for joining us, and thank you very much, Rebecca and Francesca. This was really, really great and very, very informative. I think we all learned quite a lot today. And just to remind you again that these webinars are part of our Red Week, where we're trying to raise the funds to enable us to continue our work. So you can see the Just Giving page details on your screen right now. So it would be great if you could give us any sort of donation, small or large, or anything that you can afford. And just to give you heads up for tomorrow, we're going to have another session on the sustainability tomorrow, but from a very different angle. It will be about preparing and transforming businesses for a more sustainable future. So hope you can join us tomorrow as well, and have a lovely rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you.